Thank you. Shabbat shalom, y'all. Well, we're in Hebrews chapter 4. And I was just going to read a few verses, and then we'll just start talking. This is out of the Peshitta. Let us therefore fear, while the promise of entering into his rest remains, lest some amongst you find they are prevented from entering. For the gospel was preached to us, as it was to them also, but the word they heard did not benefit them, because it was not mixed with faith in those who heard it. But when we who have believed will enter into rest, and he said, as I have sworn in my wrath, they shall not enter into my rest. For behold, the works of God were from the very foundation of the world. For he said concerning the Sabbath, God rested on the seventh day from all his works. So, to me, it seems like the author is expounding on the rest that we're hoping for, that they did not reach in the promised land. And he's bringing in belief and faith into it. So, the mention here of when it says the works of God were from the very foundation of the world. So, that seems to me that he always planned a rest. So, what does that mean to us? Oh, does anybody have any comments on that? The Most High Creator himself had a rest. I mean, I think it's very obvious to most of us. We're all trying to keep the seventh day Sabbath. We're trying to take a break from work. So we're doing the foreshadows of it now. So on verse 5, he says, and here again he said, they shall not enter into my rest. So I'd like to look at the references of that one in Hebrews 4, verse 5. Does anybody have the cross reference for that one?
It's the same. It's Psalms 95, verse 11.
Will you read it?
Oh, wait, hold on.
And good job, Kay, by the way. That's good.
Oh, it's in my Bible. So it's the last verse of that chapter. So I can start in Psalm 95, verse 9. When your fathers tried me, have provoked me, though they saw my work. For 40 years I was grieved with that generation, and said, they are a people who go astray in their hearts, as they do not know my ways, as I swore in my wrath, if they enter into my rest. This is the funny thing, because again, this in the scriptures version, it says, if they enter into my rest. Whereas in the other versions, it says, if they, it doesn't say if, but it says, they shall not enter into my rest.
So do you think they had a Sabbath day in the wilderness with Moses? Do you think they were keeping the Sabbath day?
I think so. Wasn't there an incident in where a man picking up sticks and he was stoned to death because it was the Shabbat?
I believe that's Numbers 15. It's probably in other places too.
Yes, and they were told not to collect manna on the Shabbat because it won't, there won't be any.
That's a good point. So if they were keeping the Sabbath, is that the only rest that the Creator had in mind from the beginning?
No, I think it's a picture of his kingdom, of his reign. the Shabbat. For me, because like this is how it is. Like every Shabbat, like just all the worries, you cast out your worries, your concerns, your work, and we focus on the Father, our relationship with Him. We focus on listening to His voice. We focus on learning more about Him, because that's where our relationship and intimacy with Him grow. That's how we become more obedient. And without knowledge, without knowing Him, it's hard to be in a relationship in the first place, let alone love Him. So it's important to have, we need to know Him on a daily basis, but having that one day to just focus on Him, bask in His presence, that is very special. And that is His reign. That's, just feeling His authority upon us on that day. And I look forward to having that as my everyday.
So I wonder if we have to be begotten of the Spirit in a renewed body to really enter that rest. I wonder if that rest is for us now or the rest that's coming. And to kind of put a point on it, Kay, since you're talking, I want to ask you, what do you think Adam and Eve did before they ate the fruit they weren't supposed to? What do you think the Sabbath looked like for them? Do you think they had one, or do you think every day was a Sabbath?
That's a good question. Very interesting question. Because Shabbat was from the creation, right? Father worked, and then He had one special day where He enjoyed His creation. So, and He also put them to work. It was not as if they were not working. They had to tend to the garden. He had to name the animals. He had to take care of the other creation. So I'm thinking, I don't know. That's interesting. But it's like having Shabbat every day and then having one special day. I'm not sure.
Thank you, Kay. Anybody have any ideas on that? That was a great answer, Kay. Right off the cuff like that.
Can you repeat the question? There's a lot going on here and I missed it.
What do you think that the Sabbath day looked like for Adam and Eve before they ate the fruit? Before they ate the forbidden fruit?
Perhaps. Well, we used to discuss this when I was Seventh-day Adventist, and everybody would always point out to the verses that when Yah came to walk with them, came down to the garden to walk with them, that they thought that was referring to their Sabbath, where they'd spend the day with Him. So I don't know if it's true or not, but it was an interesting concept. Because, yeah, they weren't really...
Emily, does Scripture say that He walked with them?
No, not at all.
Okay.
And it didn't formulate my view of it. I just happened to think of it at this moment in time. But I was like, yeah, it was an interesting concept. Because, yeah, like, how would they... Did they toil? Did they work and then rest on Shabbat? That I seem to think that they didn't just sit around all day with their feet up, because that's not life. That's not realistic. They had to have been doing things. They had to have had some work to do. I don't think that they just would have sat around all day. I think they actually did some sort of work and then rested on Shabbat. Our Creator worked for 6 days and then rested. So I think they did some work and then rested. Just a different kind of work, probably, than we're doing now. That's my humble opinion.
I think I agree with Emily. Just thinking about it now, because it's all about restoration, right? Restoring to how it was during the creation. And Emily is right. Like, we see the pattern was set. So 6 days of working and then Shabbat, 6 days of working and Shabbat. So probably the Shabbat will remain, but it's going to be different from how we're doing it today.
Okay, George.
It's not going to be online.
Mr. Presley, what do you think about what do you think the Sabbath looked like for Adam and Eve? Have anything to add on that?
I think there was speculation, of course, Your Honor, but I think there was things going on. But it's kind of like there was not laborious labor. You know, after we fell, then there was weeds, and man, you had by the sweat of your brow. I think there was more harvesting, and everything was cool and good. You know, oh, hey, this is ready, let's gather. You know, and after the fall, weeds came up. You know, and then it was a challenge. It went way downhill quick from then, still going downhill. That's why 2 cents worth evolution. My rear end, it's more like de-evolution. We've been going backwards ever since. You know, but anyway, that's it. Sorry, I was getting me a pear. Okay.
He's having breakfast. Oh, he's eating the fruit.
I'm eating the fruit. There you
Thanks,
go.
George. Thank you. How you feeling? You doing good?
Yeah, it's like that song. I feel good. Na, 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 na. Anyway, yeah. Everything's all right.
Okay, Logan, I bet you have something interesting. How's your internet over there? If hopefully it's working.
Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
Yes.
So, I'm kind of in agreement with probably Emily and I kind of think that I believe that they worked in the garden. I believe that they worked before the fall. I think that they probably rested on the seventh day. It seems like it's kind of a pattern from creation, and it seems like it was the pattern before the fall. I can't imagine that this is somehow. I don't know. I think that there's a final rest still, but I still think that I almost wonder if that pattern will somehow continue still, even in the millennial reign. You know, it's not a thing of like, well, it's just some finality where once the final rest comes, like there is no more cycle in a sense. It seems like there's always a cycle, and I seem to think that if things were good before the fall, and Yahweh rested, then they must have been doing like Yahweh still, and that's part of the Torah is bringing us back to life. I think, you know, in truth, and that was that there was life and truth in the cycle of the rest. So I don't know. That's just my thoughts on it.
Thanks, Logan. That's a good comment. Hey, LeBlanc household, are you guys able to comment right now? Over at the LeBlanc house?
Okay. I'm fairly confident that I'm 100% certain that Adam tended the garden, which to him would have been work. Because that's what he was placed there to care the garden. When he was created, he wasn't actually created in the garden. He was placed into the garden after he was created to tend it and take care of it and to take dominion over it. As far as Hawa goes, she was placed there. She was created to be a helper to him and to help him with his tasks. And they were to be echad, or together. So yes, they worked, I believe.
So I have a comment. So in Genesis, the word used is different from the word that's used in Psalm, the Hebrew word, and so the one word that's used in Genesis is from what I'm gathering is to cease or desist, whereas the other is more like a resting place. And I'm not sure of what the difference is other than like Michael was saying, like Adam and Hawa were in the garden and they were tending in the garden, and on Shabbat they ceased, or you know, they rested in that where they ceased work, and And yeah, so I'm in agreement with that concept. And in answer to your question, I have another comment, but I'll save it for when we go into it outside of Adam and Hava in the Garden of Eden.
Thanks, Tremaine. Hey, Anson, what do you think?
I would say that my answer would be both, in a sense that, you know, they'll be working day 1 to day 6, but they work with all the joy and all shalom. You know, it's not that they're working hard, but they enjoy working. And then the 7th day would be the day that they will have the same joy and peace. The only difference is that they'll be doing no work. So I guess it's the same, you know, not like what we're having right now, right? Like me, like day 1 to day 6 would be like worse, and day 7 for me is good. But I think when you're in that situation, like Adam and Eve, like day 1 and day 6 would be better, and day 7 would be the best, something like that. So yeah, in a sense, I'd say, you know, both. The only difference is the absence of actual, you know, physical activity for them. Because, you know, there should be a difference. There should be a difference to really set apart the 7th day.
Good comment. Thank you, Anson. All right, Carrie. Are you there, dear?
Yeah.
Did you have any comments?
Lauren did. No. What's the initial question to make sure I answer the question?
We were
right?
just talking about what the Sabbath day might look like for Adam and Eve before they fell.
Well, I think probably like what we do. Nothing. Instead of going out and pruning and you know, taking time and harvesting whatever they were harvesting, or instead of doing the regular chores that they would do every other day of the week, they didn't do that on the 7th day. I don't think work has to do so much with sweating and exerting energy as much as it has to do with how you occupy your time and what you employ yourself to do. And if your employment is to be the keeper of the garden, then you do that for 6 days, and then on the 7th day you rest from doing that. So essentially, I think that's what was happening in the garden.
So now I'm going to have a few comments. Thank you, Carrie. First, I was going to say, I think the manna description gives us a little bit of an indication. They were gathering. The manna in the original garden would have just been the produce of the land, so they probably gathered their meals 6 days a week, and on the 7th day, they wouldn't go out and gather. They would just gather enough on the last day of the week to get them through. They would just take the day off. So if the Creator worked, I think that he intends for those that are made in his image to work. And the work is not maybe a job like we have. It's more like just being, going about what you're talented at, what you're good at, what you're passionate about, working in the strengths of what he made you to be. And he created life, and he gave us this whole dominion. And when we work in his image, this is a little bit of a tangent, but we create life. I create life. I can go clone apple trees, or I can get seeds and plant them. I can get quail eggs and hatch them. I can create life working what he gave me to work with. So I definitely think if a man does not work, he does not eat. He intended us
Right.
to be industrious, and then go ahead, George.
No, you're right. I agree.
So I think the first fruits, or those that are going to be redeemed from a creation, I think this rest, we were going to maybe look more into the words for rest. It's been a long time since I've been there. I remember there's two different Greek words in here. One's katapausis and one's something else. There's two different kind of rests, even in the Greek language, that interesting to look at. So he's saying they will not have rest. So what rest is he taking away from them? The ones that did not believe. He said, he swore they would not enter into his rest. So I'm trying to understand. I guess this is no rest for the wicked. I mean, I hear that phrase and it just makes me think those guys are never going to get a break. So if anybody has any comments, I'm kind of thinking a little bit. Does anybody have anything to say?
Well, I was looking up the Hebrew word for rest that's talked about in Psalms and Genesis and comparing it with the Greek word that's used in Hebrews, and then like you were saying, they're two different types of rest. The one is to cease from work, and the other one is like having a resting place, or more like it seems to me like it's addressing more like the peace. And so when I read it in context in Hebrews, what I get, and in Psalms, is what I get is that the rest that living in his kingdom brings. And that kind of, I know we were talking about a number of different things last Shabbat, and I don't want to take it off point, but it's almost like how we live, like you're saying, Ty. It's like the wicked. There's like the wicked not having any rest, and for those who are being obedient, then there's protection. There's the rest. There's the yeah. I'll just stop there while I get some more of my thoughts together.
I think the rest in 4:9 is sabbatismos in the Greek. So katapausis and sabbatismos. So I don't know about that. What is it?
I was comparing.
Go ahead.
I was comparing the rest in verses 3 and 4 because as Tremaine said, and she is right, that the rest in Psalm 95 is different from the rest which is quoted in verse 4. It's from Bereshit 2 verse 2. So in Hebrew, those are two different words, but in Greek, they're the same. They're katapausis. They're from the same Greek word. And it's only, so all of the rest in chapters 3 and 4 are katapausis except for verse 9.
What was the difference in the Hebrew word between verse 3 and 4?
Verse 3 would be, the root word would be closer to Noach, like rest. And then the verse 4, where it says, and Elohim rested on the seventh day, rested there, it's Shabbat. Seas. Very interesting.
Nice. Carrie, have you looked into this at all? Have you done any more in-depth look at the rest in Hebrews 4?
Okay, I did not hear all that was said, but yes, I have. And I know in the beginning of the year I had some talk about there remains a Sabbath keeping. So if you have a specific question, I can answer you. I have looked at the words katapausis and others, but what is yours? Do you have a specific question?
Not really. I just wondered if you had a take on it. I studied this way back when I was still going to Sunday church, and I was scouring the New Testament for all the Sabbath mentions, like, the first day of the week, Mia Sabbaton and all that, one of the Sabbaths. And I was just trying to find the support for a Sunday Sabbath, and it wasn't anywhere. And I landed in verse 4:9, and I really got into it way back when. And it's like, the Sabbath stands. There's no way that you can change it. There's nothing to change it. This is actually validating. This is, like, to me, the key verse in the New Testament to say, keep the seventh day. It's right there. So, but I didn't catch a lot of the other things we're going to be talking about. That's for sure in Hebrews.
Yes, and Sabbatismos is better translated because it says here Sabbath rest, which doesn't mean anything. It's better translated as Sabbath keeping duty.
I like that. So if the Most High did it, we certainly should be doing it, and we should be seeking His rest. So this is His people now, the ones that are looking for that later rest. We're seeking to just do the rest we can now. So it makes me think of the fringes, which is a whole nother thing that was added on later after they broke the Sabbath. So what did everybody do when we changed over from Sunday to Saturday? How many here put on tassels? Because you were Sabbath breakers, and now you put on the tassels to remind yourself not to break the Sabbath, basically. So did anybody not wear tassels or fringes or tzitzits or whatever you want to call them? Did anybody here not ever wear them?
Well, I started keeping a Sabbath of sorts years ago as a Seventh-day Adventist. So coming from that viewpoint, a totally different viewpoint, but actually, you mean actually keeping Shabbat, like being Torah observant? Yeah, we all put them on.
I want to ask, who's still wearing them? Who has them on? I'm interested to know that.
I wear them occasionally, but I stopped wearing them a while ago because I don't know. It just felt, I don't know. It just felt off, like I shouldn't be wearing them, and I can't explain it, but it did. So I'll put them on sometimes, then I don't know. It just didn't. And I don't know where that thought came from, but I felt like I shouldn't be wearing them anymore.
Emily, I don't wear them anymore either. Anybody else? Please, everybody.
I don't wear them every day anymore, but I'm wearing them now because I still have some shirts that my lovely wife made me. Oh no, where she made them onto the shirt, so I have them on today. But I don't wear them every day anymore. Since I looked at the Melchizedek study and also looking at Hebrews and what's talked about in Hebrews, it's like that one statement that Matthew Nolan says really hit home with me is, why do I want to connect myself to a broken covenant? And not only that, but if you got a dog that keeps crapping on the rug, you're gonna have to rub his nose in it here and there. But if the other dog that's not crapping on the rug, he doesn't have to experience that because he's not crapping on the rug. So I don't want to crap on the rug, so I'm just going to try not to crap on the rug.
There is a positive about people wearing them. I've met a couple friends because I saw somebody wearing them in public, and I approached them, and I never would have met them otherwise. So that is a positive. And I know other people who've met people that way. They saw somebody in public and they're like, hey, you're wearing tzitzit. And next thing you know, there's a connection. So there is that. Kind of makes you stand out in a way that, other people understand.
We have the same experience, Emily, and it's really cool that way, yes. But we don't wear them also, like, it's like it's a season. The way I see it, it's a season. Like, you're infant in the faith, you need to be reminded, you wear them, and then as you grow older, you become more mature in your faith, and then you don't need reminding. It just becomes automatic.
How about you, Logan?
So I had my first pair, like I've not been doing this very long, as long as you guys, but I wore them out to like nothing. I shredded them, and I have the material to make my next pair. And so I feel like I forget about it sometimes now, because I've now not worn them for like a month or something like that, maybe. And so I'm like, I need to make some more, and I'll wear them again, once I make some more. But I just, man, with my lifestyle, I tear them to pieces. I'm trying to figure out a way that doesn't involve them. And they hang up on my gun sometimes too, so I've got to figure out something around that.
Kevlar, Logan. You got to make them out of Kevlar.
There you go. I need some Kevlar ballistic nylon seats. I saw one guy who made them out of paracord, and I was like, that's a great idea. I was like, they're like huge, but I'm like, man, I'd take a long time to wear those things out if I made them. And I got paracord with me, What are those for? I mean, this is just in case, I have to tie somebody up, or we, get in a plane crash and need to build a spear, or, a bow drill fire. That's what this is for. And it helps remind me of the commandments too.
So bug out fringes, man. There's a new thing right there.
Yeah, I laced a fiber saw inside of them.
How about you, Mr. Presley? Yeah, are you still wearing your fringes?
I never did. I just never went the seat route. No, I mean, I'm not sure why. I just did. But I like the bug out ones. That might work. But anyway, no, I watched some YouTube videos on how to make them, and I thought it was a cool concept, kind of like what Emily was saying, it's like a starter to get someone, hey, what are those, or whatever, you know what I mean? But I don't know. I just never did. I guess didn't really understand the value of it, other than you broke the cover. You know what I mean? I understand that, but I don't know. Just never done it.
Thanks, George. Well, I think Logan said it all when he says they get worn out to nothing. They get frayed, worn out, caught in the washing machine, get stuck on stuff, rip them off, lose them. They wear you out. They get worn out. I think it, and I'm all about keeping Torah. I know everybody else here is too. We have two witnesses in there. We have Numbers 15:38 and Deuteronomy 22:12, I think it is. So I don't know. Did the Messiah wear them? So they say he did. They say there's healing in his wings. I don't know. That would be interesting to see if he actually really did wear them or not. That's a tangent, but go ahead, Tremaine.
Sorry, Ty, I don't mean to distract you while you're talking. But, I, right now, like when I go out, I wear them, and on Shabbat, I wear them. Like day to day, I don't. And so it's interesting because when I started learning about the Melchizedek priesthood, I saw this correlation with me and my walk with wearing a head covering versus not wearing a head covering, even though it's not as as straightforward in terms of wearing a head covering. And so I remember when I for me, when I started keeping Torah, being a woman, like according to the Father Yah standard, is like I failed in a lot of different areas. And so for me, that head covering was like that maturation process. And so I kind of equate the wearing the tzitzit with a maturation process. And so now when I go out, it kind of, for me, ends up being like Emily was saying, when other people see you with the tzitzit on, then they ask questions. Like I've had my aunt and Michael's sister talk to me about Tzitzit, and they're like, well, I want to learn how to make Tzitzit. I want you to make Tzitzit for me. And my response to them was, okay, if you're going to wear them, you have to understand what they mean and why you're wearing them. And you have to make that decision for yourself, not just because you see me wearing it or other people wearing it. So in a way now, I see how it can be kind of like a way to be a testimony to other people who are not keeping Torah. And so then there are the semantics of, okay, what are Tzitzit? I'm coming, buddy. What are Tzitzit? Sorry about that. What are Tzitzit, and are we really wearing them like it was originally commanded? So I'm kind of right now. I see Emily shaking her head. So right.
We're not wearing them the way we're supposed to, because it's silly. It's silly the way we attach them. I don't know. I don't think we are. That's one of the reasons why I stepped away from it. I'm like, how am I supposed to wear them the way y'all commanded if I don't even feel right about wearing them this way? Because I don't know. It just didn't set well with me. I just think that we're not. So maybe that's part of it. I don't know. Anyways, sorry, I didn't mean to distract. I was just had to shake my head no.
Not a distraction at all.
Agreed.
It's Numbers 15:38 and Deuteronomy 22:12. It's in Torah, but the timing of it.
I meant the 4, because usually people.
Oh, the 4. Oh, the 4.
Right?
Sorry, I
Number
did.
4.
Context is everything. Yeah,
I used to wear them, but I would wear just 2 in front where I can see them. And then people say, "Oh, you have to wear 4." I said, "Where does it say that?" And then, "Well, it's the corners." I said, "Okay, but my skirt doesn't have corners, and so where do I, which corner?" So I just don't think you have to wear 4, because at the back I don't see them, and they're supposed to be reminders. Like for me, not for other people. I mean, if other people notice them, that's good. But it's actually for the wearer, the one wearing it, right, to see. So I don't know. I'm asking about the 4.
I did 2 sometimes, and I did 4 sometimes. I got to where I would only wear them when I went out. I wouldn't wear them around the house at all. I'd have a linen shirt with them attached. I'd just put that on and wear that. I usually 4, sometimes 2, sometimes 3.
One fell off.
Just the reality of life. I can't find it. I gotta go. Forget it.
How about that? It's one of the only commands that it's listed a couple places, but there's no consequences if you don't do it. That's a big one to me, because every other command, it's if you don't do this, this shall happen. This shall happen. This one is just wear them. That's all it says. So.
That's right. And when did they first put them on? They had already come across the Red Sea. They'd already been there for a while, and they put them on later. Definitely wasn't the first time Moses came down. It wasn't even the second time he came down. It was later on. And who commanded it? Did Moses command it, or did the Most High command it? That's another question you got to ask on that. So didn't want to go too much on a tangent. I would just, the greater point is, I think we're all seeking to find the rest that the Most High has for us, and we're all so we're looking forward to a different kind of rest. So was there any more comments from anybody at all? The floor is open. We only have 10 minutes left. So this big talk on rest is good, because it's definitely, we need to look at all the different kind of rest to understand chapter 4 here. So did anybody have any questions or comments, or do you want to push on a little? I'm going to go ahead with verse 5. And here again he said, they shall not enter into my rest. And then verse 6, there was a chance for some to enter therein, but they to whom the gospel was first preached did not enter because they would not listen. And again, after a long time, he appointed another day, as it was written above. For David said, today, if you hear his voice, harden not your hearts. So if they were already resting, David wouldn't have said, you can enter into your rest today. I think it's kind of what the author is conveying. Anybody have a different translation than this one for like 6 and 7?
I can read from the scriptures. Since then it remains for some to enter into it, and those who formerly received the good news did not enter in because of disobedience, he again defines a certain day, today, saying through David so much later, as it has been said, today, if you hear his voice, do not harden your hearts.
Go ahead and read the next one too. Go ahead. We kind of cut it off. Go ahead and read the next verse too. 8.
Right, verse 8. For if Yahusha had given them rest, he would not have spoken of another day after that. So there remains a Shabbat keeping duty for the people of Elohim.
So what do you think the author is saying there? I'm trying to kind of understand his thoughts there. Those few verses together. What do you think? Did you get anything out of that? I'm trying to kind of comprehend it. So anybody can help me out a little.
One important thing that I see is how in verse 6, unbelief is translated as disobedience in my translation. It seems like unbelief equals disobedience because belief is always backed up by action. I'm not sure about verse 7, about where it's talking about David. In the Young's literal, it says, again, he doth limit a certain day, today, in David saying, after so long a time, as it hath been said today, if his voice ye may hear, ye may not harden your hearts. What is the connection with David?
Okay, I think the author is pointing back to the Psalm. Was it 95? I think when the quote that he said above, I think he's pointing back to that quote. But when was David's lifetime? Wasn't it like 1200 BC or something? 1100, somewhere in there? So this was way after the Sabbath day was given to the Hebrews. So even in the first temple era, with the priests working, and they had the Ark of the Covenant, they had all of that working, and yet David is saying today, which is way past. So I think the author's pointing to the fact that David plugged. I hope I'm still working here. Okay. Does that make any sense at all? Did that help at all? Okay.
You were cut off for a few seconds there. Yes, but that was helpful. Yes, thank you.
Hey Logan, are you coming in, buddy?
Sorry. I couldn't hear you, Ty. What would you say?
Oh, I just wondered if you had any comments. We just got a couple minutes left. I was going to give you a chance to say something if you had something.
I'm sorry. I have a mixer going and I can't hear.
You're over there cooking a cake. All right, brother. No problem. No problem.
All right.
Thanks, Logan. Don't worry about it, brother. Don't worry. Hey, Carrie, did you want to say something?
No, not yet.
Okay. We're not clicking this morning. It is therefore the duty of the people of God to keep the Sabbath. And I don't think anybody here is arguing that. So, for he who has entered into his rest also has ceased from his own works as God did from his. Let us strive therefore to enter into that rest, lest any man fall like those who were disobedient. So, we must believe that there's a rest, and I guess that's what I'm getting out of it. He's telling us to rest now and look forward, believe that there will be another rest. Because it's what he was saying, don't harden your hearts. They did not enter because they did not listen. I guess the whole idea of chapter 4 is telling people to not break the Sabbath. Does that seem like the main idea of the author here? Is anybody getting something else? Is he like preaching to the Hebrews to keep the Sabbath? Was it an issue with them? I don't understand the context of where this is put in the conversation. The bigger picture of it, in the timing of where he put it in. Maybe we can look at that next week. Does anybody have any quick thoughts on that? Because I don't understand.
Hi. I was just thinking of this passage. I can't remember where it is, where Messiah said something about him not resting because the Father is still at work or something like that. Is there a passage?
Acts 1:7 maybe, where he says the set times. Nobody knows the set times, which are in the Father's hands. Is that the one you're talking about? Or is it where he says the fox has a den and so, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head? Is that the one you're looking for? No?
I think it's the one where they're accusing him of breaking the Sabbath or something to that effect. And I can't exactly remember where Kay's reference, but I remember him saying something like that. Why are you healing on the Sabbath or something like that? And he replies, he implies that my Father's not resting now. He's working now. I wish I could remember exactly where it was in one of the Gospels. But is that what you're referencing, Kay?
Yes, I'm trying to look. Oh, it's probably John 5. I'm trying to look at John 5.
Can I make a quick comment while you look for that?
Go ahead.
So the comment that I have is that the rest that's talked about here, it's coming across to me like it has to do with being obedient. I think I mentioned this before, with being obedient, and it includes keeping the Shabbat, but it goes a little bit further, and that we are seeking the Father's will above our own, and when we seek His will above our own, then we find the resting place. as opposed to when we try and do things in our own. And then this is just in the concept of speaking to the Hebrews, like speaking to those who are keeping the Sabbath. Not to say that the Sabbath is done away. You know, it's like you keep the Sabbath, the resting Sabbath, but on top of that, it's like, okay, we need to be obedient to his will above our own. And that encouragement is what I'm getting from that passage. And when we do that, we find the resting place that resembles the foreshadow of living in his kingdom. And which kind of taps into some of the stuff we talked about last week, but I don't want to get off topic.
Yes, I like what you said, Jermaine. And it's very restful to obey the Father. It's less stressful.
Maybe it's referring to. I'm sorry, Ty. I just have a quick thought. Maybe it's kind of goes along with Jermaine. Maybe it's referring to, just in different words, being blessed from obedience. You know, obedience is blessing, disobedience not. And when there's that obedience, it's less stressful, it's more restful. Even when you're in the heart of a storm, when you're following in your Father's ways, things are better. I don't know. Maybe it's kind of referring to something along those lines.
I have an idea. So, and I'm not going to be pulling from any verses or anything, but the whole idea that I have about this chapter, why would anyone have to mention keeping the Sabbath to the Hebrews who already know about the Sabbath? But they knew about the Sabbath. They knew about all the commands, right? And then they hear now about this new thing, about this Messiah came in, and now he's the Son. He's over the angels even. And this is now the way through the Father. The Father speaks to us through him. So there has clearly been a change. But don't let that fool you, because we're still keeping Sabbath and we're still honoring the Father's commands. Okay? You know, don't get off the path just for the sake of this new teaching. You know, this teaching goes along with the path, and it brings it into fruition, and it shows you how it's supposed to be embodied through us and by us by the will of the Father. So one doesn't replace the other. It just overlays the other and brings more meaning and depth to it so it can actually mature and become what it's supposed to be.
You know, Michael, you just prompted me to think something here. They started doing the 8th day of the week as another second Sabbath in this time frame after the Messiah. This is actually how Sunday worship came to be founded. They were worshiping, they were giving the Father an extra day. And I think that perhaps this chapter 4 would be addressing that time. Don't change it to the first day. You can go make sure it's the 7th day, because I think maybe they were being led from actually keeping the Sabbath. This is where the Christians got it, even though they don't know it. And isn't it in Clement? Isn't that where some of that's talked about, Carrie?
I think it's the Epistle of Barnabas.
Barnabas.
It's either that. I'm pretty sure it's like around the 11th chapter or something of Barnabas. I'd have to look at it.
So maybe that's the need to remind them to keep the Sabbath. So in a way, this is very relevant to us because we've been through this whole struggle. So this would be for us. It's funny, this is where I landed when I first was looking, chapter 4, when I was first really kicking around the idea of the Sabbath day. I mean, this is really bringing it home for me. Anyway, I just want to comment on that. Go ahead.
Are you talking to me? Go ahead.
It is one. Unless
okay. Okay. No, that's fine. Hi, everybody.
Is that the Heredias?
Yes.
Yes, it is. Hello, Shabbat Shalom.
You don't like Hebrews? Oh, no. Shabbat Shalom. Shabbat.
So, this morning, or this week, I was thinking about the only begotten Son of God. I've been looking at John more, the book of John, and kind of having some aha moments, but not really brand new aha moments. It's just seeing things and connecting dots afresh, and it's got me kind of excited. And one thought that I had was, we hear the phrase, the only begotten Son of God, that Jesus, Yeshua, is the only begotten Son of God. And what I found interesting, and maybe you didn't realize this, is that phrase is only used of Yeshua by John. None of the other none of the other Gospels refer to him as the only begotten Son. Paul doesn't use that phraseology pertaining to him. It comes from the author of John, and you see it in both John and in 1 John. And the reason why I bring this up is because in looking at the first chapter of John, everybody's familiar with, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The same was in the beginning with God. And then everybody jumps down to verse 14, and the Word became flesh and dwelt among us, and we beheld his glory, the glory as of the only begotten of the Father, full of grace and truth. Right there, as of the only begotten, that word, only begotten, that's the first time that it appears in the book of John. And he is speaking of the light. It's all within that context of him laying out the whole introduction to his book, which is the first, 18, 20 verses in John. I'm not sure exactly how many verses. And I was thinking about how in the past we were talking in Hebrews, the book of Hebrews, how the author introduces his book referring to having spoken through the prophets in the days in the past, but in these last days, he's speaking to us through a son. And we need to pay, and I think we are doing this here, but this is like getting more solid in my mind, and I want to tell more people this outside of our little Zoom room here, about understanding references to Father and Son, and when both Yeshua and other authors use those terms, then we understand what those terms are first before we superimpose a specific person onto that term. Because when we do that, we limit what that term could possibly mean. So, for example, speaks to us in the Son. We understand that if you keep on reading, he's referring to Yeshua. He refers back. You can see the association with Yeshua, both in Hebrews 1 and in John 1. But he could have said, in the beginning was Jesus, and Jesus was with God, and Jesus was God. Like, he could have superimposed the person that he was wanting to talk about right up in the beginning, right up in the front. But he didn't. And I think he has a reason for that. Okay, so where am I going with this? The idea of, I do believe that Yeshua is the only begotten Son, in the way that John, my understanding of how he is identifying him is he starts by saying, okay, it's established in the beginning, there was the Word, the saying, and the saying was with God, and the saying was God. I think he's talking about the words spoken. In the beginning were spoken words of God, the Word. And the first thing spoken was, let there be light. And there was life in the speaking, because when he spoke, whatever it is that he spoke came to light, came to be. And the light came to be before anything else came to be. It was there before the heavens and the earth were formed and filled. So it was preeminent. It was before creation. The light was. Okay, now the author of John goes a little bit further, and he says, okay, now I'm going to tell you about a man named John who was sent from God to be a witness, to witness about the light. And then he goes and talks about how John is not that light, the true light that gives light to all who are coming into the world. He's drawing your attention to, I believe, Yeshua. That's who he's talking about. But he's using references to the light because of what is defining about that light. That light was preeminent from all other light, for any other light that came to be later. Like, let there be lights in the heavens on the fourth day. The light from the beginning, was preeminent. So I think the author is trying to demonstrate that Yeshua is the true light that is preeminent from any other light that may have come after. He's also alluding to attributes about that light. And then you see it all throughout his book, referring to Yeshua being the light of the world and so forth. The only begotten Son. I think that is more than just referring to the man, Yeshua, or I think he's also alluding to the fact that he was anointed, being the Messiah. Because, all right, I'm just trying to think how I can take you where my thoughts are. It has been known from the beginning, I believe, that the Father has a Son, and this Son is anointed to be over all. The thing is, the people before Yeshua's day were not exactly clear as to who this Son is. Specifically, like, what's his name, like his real, who's his mom and who's his dad. They didn't necessarily know the specifics of who it was, but they did know that there was going to be a Son of Man who was considered the Son of God. And this is all foretold. And they were waiting for the revelation of who this Son of Man is. And I think it was beginning to be revealed through Abraham. And then it was further revealed in David, when David was told that a seed will come from his own loins, and that this seed of his will be a son to Yahweh, and Yahweh would be a father to him. So there's a revealing there that, okay, you're going to have offspring, and I'm going to establish, he's going to sit on a throne, and I'm going to establish his kingdom, and it will be everlasting. And I will be a father to him, and he will be to me a son. And then you see in the Psalms references to this idea of God and his anointed, and he in Psalm 2, and referring to a son sitting at the right hand of God in the order of Melchizedek, a priest he would be made a priest forever in the order of Melchizedek. I think that's Psalm 110. So this idea has been coming throughout the Old Testament that the Father has a Son who is set to rule overall, and he's going to act as a priest. And this is what the ancient or the Israelites would understand as the Messiah. This is the Messiah, and they're all anticipating the coming of this Messiah. And they've been given enough details to know that it's going to come out of Abraham, it's going to come out of David, and so they're just anticipating that. And then, of course, when we get into the New Testament, we have Mary getting being visited by the messenger, saying that she's going to conceive and bring forth a son, and this son will be called the Son of the Most High. So in her mind, she's understanding that, oh, this is the Son. This is the Son, that this is the Messiah. So she understands through the paradigm of Scripture who this Son is. The problem that we have in our modern culture, especially in this Christian, really heavily big westernized Christian culture, is we don't understand, well, most don't understand what it means to be called the Son of God. And you know, I've mentioned this in the past. I mean, this has been a struggle for me for years, but it's come to the surface again recently. There are people who are denying Yeshua as the Son. They're denying him. They're denying the notion that he is the Messiah, that he is the anointed one. And these are Torah observant people. These are people that read their Bibles, that were believers in Yeshua as the Messiah. Of course, they had their idea of what that meant. And then they started recognizing, oh, wait a minute, the law is not put away in the way that Christians tell me it is. I think we are supposed to keep the Sabbath day, and I think we are supposed to obey all the 10 Commandments. And so they go back to the Old Testament, and they read the Old Testament, and they start to get to know who the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is. And they get to have a more well-rounded understanding of who this God is. And then they start to question, like, well, wait a minute. Yahweh says that he is their Savior and their God, and there is no Savior but him. And then they start feeling very shaky about the claims that are made about Yeshua in the New Testament being Savior and Yeshua being God. And wait a minute, you know, and things are not computing, and they're very, very shaky. And so they want to reject the Jesus that they had been raised to believe in, because they're realizing it doesn't jive with what they're seeing in the Old Testament. And my cry for the last several years is like, wait. It's because we have a false image of who the Jesus of the New Testament is. We have to shore up, you know, we got to revisit the New Testament and learn who the Jesus of the New Testament is, and not just rely on the Jesus that we were taught about. And unfortunately, though, many people, they don't do that. They don't re-explore the New Testament the same way they explore the Old Testament. And I don't know, it's hard to see, it's hard to watch. And but in this time, I have been using my time personally to better understand who is this Jesus of the New Testament. I'm trying to understand, okay, let's start from the very beginning of the New Testament, in that when Jesus was, even before he was born. Let's start there. Let's start in Luke. What does it say about that? And building on that foundation and of his life as to okay, what is being said about the coming of him in the New Testament, and that's in the first chapter of Luke. And then what is said about when his mother is pregnant with him, that's the first chapter of Matthew. What does that say? And about when he's actually born, okay, that's the very first part of, that's in Luke 2, and then the very first verse, or first 2 verses of Matthew 2. And then kind of like get a better understanding of who this person is that is born Savior of the world. Who is this that for unto us is born this day in the city of David a Savior? Who is this guy? And this is where we have to get back to, and this is as you most everybody here on this in this Zoom call know, this is where my passion has been, because I'm recognizing, I'm seeing now, this Jesus is the son of David by way of Joseph and Mary. And he is a physical human being. He is a human being. Hence, he refers to himself all throughout his ministry as the Son of Man. He doesn't refer to himself as the Son of God. He calls himself the Son of Man. Now, I understand, I believe that that's also a specific title. He's not just a Son of Man, but he's the Son of Man, referring to the anointed Son of Man that we see in the book of Enoch, but also in the book of Daniel, that's prophesied of the Son of Man coming before the Ancient of Days. I believe it's Daniel 7. So he refers to himself as the Son of Man. But the Jesus that is taught in our Western culture wants to remove the fact that he is actually a physical Son of Man, that his father is a man. And it's like that's severed from most people's conscience. Like they don't even see that anymore because it's been drowned out. And we need to get that back in there. We need to get that back in there. I feel that for myself personally, that is my mission, is to get the word out of what the New Testament actually says, studying the words behind our English words, and in light of context, and also within the greater context of the Old Testament. That's my thing. And I'm feeling more and more compelled to do this because in our culture, we are embracing, the world is embracing a savior mentality of an alien, of something from heaven coming down and getting with something on earth, and the two together becoming an enhanced human being in a way that is supernatural, super unnatural. But they want to put on their supernatural because God is behind this. But they take out the humanity of who this person is, and they make this person deity, and it's so wicked. It's so not what our Father lays out for us all throughout. It's so not what the Bible says. So okay, I'm gonna that was a nice long 25-minute monologue there. I'm gonna go ahead and open up and let you guys talk, but yeah, what do you feedback? Go ahead and talk.
I wanted to make a comment on what you just said, that just this supernatural vision that's being given of the imposter of Jesus or Yahusha. I'm reminded back to the adversary, and how he was envious of the creation, and how in this whole process, I need y'all to be quiet a moment. In this whole process, it's like humanity is basically looked at as something being menial and something that has no power, no nothing. And then there's this desire that's evoked, through a number of different outlets that humankind needs to desire to be something more than what the Father created us to be. And in that, to just kind of sum it up, is basically negating what the Father created and the intentions of that creation. And so when I think of it on a personal level, when I think of it on a personal level, I think of it as the Father made me who I am. And what that means to someone looking at me physically, what that means to somebody who relates to me with the gifts and talents that I have, and I can appreciate the creation that he has made in me as a child, as his child, or I can choose something different. And for me, in my experience, as what most would call an African American, it's like, okay, well, do I try and bleach my skin? Do I try and straighten my hair? Do I try and do all these things to change who I am from what he said is good in his creation to something else, and to try and supplant that? And it kind of leads to taking the dominion and authority that he's given us and not using it for his will, but for our own will or some other will. And yeah, I'll just stop there.
Yeah, I think that the enemy has done a really good job of distracting us and reshaping our image of what it means to be a man or a woman, to be a human being. We think too little of Yahweh's creation. Not that we should be thinking more highly of ourselves than we ought. I don't mean it in that way. I mean, Yahweh made Adam in his own image and likeness, and it was good. And we need to own that. Now, we have sinned in our past. We have made mistakes in our past. Adam, we're not perfect yet, but we are being perfected as we learn our Father's ways and we shed what we know to be wrong. We shed those things. We become perfected in time in our obedience to him. And as we grow in knowledge and understanding and wisdom, we become stronger spiritually, and we become more identifiable as a son of God. My understanding is that a son of man, is the flesh. Our bodies, let's see, how did I word this before? Our bodies demonstrate who our father, our physical father is, okay? Because we're made from the seed of our fathers, our human fathers. So our body demonstrates who our physical father is. Our words and our actions demonstrate who our spiritual father is. And we are begotten of, let's see, the words, we're told that the word is the seed. And so we have words that are implanted, sown in our hearts and minds, and that seed takes root and grows, and then brings forth through our words and our actions. That's how we come to bear. as far as identifying whether we are born from above or born from below, is what kind of fruit do we bear? And if our fruit is in keeping with the Father, then it becomes revealed that we are children of the Most High. But if our fruit that we come to bear is not of our Father, then we reveal ourselves to be children of something else. So that's my understanding. So when someone says that so-and-so is a son of God, what they're identifying with is spiritually. Are you a spiritual? Not your flesh, not whether our flesh is from God. Our flesh is from man. Flesh begets flesh, spirit begets spirit. Our spirit comes from the Most High, but then the words and the seeds that are sown into our hearts and minds, what comes of that and the fruit that we bear, that is what demonstrates who is our Father, who is our spiritual Father. I hope that is making some sense. So when okay, go ahead, Michael.
You just quoted Messiah. Flesh begets flesh, spirit begets spirit. And he walked around talking about he was flesh. Here I am in the flesh. So he indirectly said that I came from my mother and father, but he is my Father spiritually.
Yes. Yes, and that was just it. What Yeshua did throughout his whole life, at least of the recording that we have in the New Testament, is he spoke the words of his heavenly Father. And that demonstrated him as the Son of God, because of the words that he was saying were, he was speaking the words of his Father. When he says, I need to be about my Father's business, he is doing the works, the actions, and the speaking of his Father's words. He's referring to his heavenly Father. So you see that it's in Luke, I believe it's Luke 2, talking about when Yeshua was a boy and he was hanging back at the temple talking, and his mother and father came looking for him. Where have you been? We've been looking for you. And he said, I need to be about my Father's business. And they were like, they kind of took it to heart what he was saying, and Mary pondered those things, I think it says. We're beginning, so I think kind of lays out for us what I'm trying to communicate here. Okay, so we need to have this understanding solidified in our minds, so that way we can communicate it with other people. When I see people that are rejecting Yeshua as the Messiah, I see them rejecting the false image of Yeshua. They need to know who the true image of Yeshua is. They need to have a true understanding of who he is and what he said, and understand. I mean, I recognize I can't make people see who Jesus, I can't make them see and understand what I see and understand. All I can do is share what I think and give an answer for myself. They have to have eyes to see. But we need to have a good grasp of that, and I believe that it's needful for us to share the good news. It is good news that Yeshua is a man, a son of man, and a son of God, and he leads the way for us into the kingdom, and we are. Yes, Emily, do you want to say something? Okay, go ahead, say.
Just kind of going along this whole thing, how people are obsessed with the thought of him being a supernatural being, part human, part man, that whole concept. So what if, and it's kind of crazy out there, but you guys are okay with crazy out there. What if the fallen ones and, devil or whatever you want to call him, was, jealous of mankind and our role. So what if they've created the reverse, to where humans are idolizing and wanting to be something, because most humans are not happy with who they are. A lot, they're not. They want to be someone else. They want to be more than what they are. And look at everything that's around us, the superhumanism, the half man, half this, the human animal mix, the human, machine mix, all that stuff. So what if there was an agenda to make it so that it's so difficult to be happy with a human and how beautiful humanity is in our role that we're created, so that way we'd be jealous of things that aren't human. I'm trying, I know it's here, but it's kind of hard vocalizing it, so that there was an agenda to create that, so that way, that's why people are struggling with the idea that Jesus is a man. He's a human man. Because that was the whole agenda to begin with. Maybe not the agenda to solely make people believe that Jesus is more than human, but so that mankind would not be happy with who we are, and we would be jealous of what they are. I don't know. Maybe there's something to that.
Yeah, I think the enemy wants us to despise what the Creator made with us. The enemy wants us to despise our dominion, which Ty talks about all the time, and he wants us to despise our humanity, because we have been given the blessing that has been given to Adam and all who come after him are twofold: fertility and dominion. We have been made to be fruitful. They don't reproduce after like kind the way we do. They're limited. They can speak, and the things that they say, they can reproduce after like kind by way of speaking. But man, we have the ability to reproduce flesh after like kind, but not just that. We have the ability to speak and reproduce after like kind, reproducing more sons of God. By us speaking, we can do that too. So we can have children and raise up our children and multiply not just sons of men, but also sons of God. The enemy can't do that. The enemy, all he can do is destroy, and he can lie and take back what has been given to us. But he can't go out there and reproduce after like kind in the same way that we can. At least that's what I'm thinking right now, and it's up for being held accountable. And if you guys, as I'm saying this, you're thinking, well, wait a minute, what about this? Feel free to say that. I'm open to have back and forth discussion on that. But it is fertility and dominion. And I do think you're right, Emily. I think that the enemy is trying to get us to despise what the Creator made us to be. And that is a reason why people have a trouble with accepting Yeshua as a man, because we have reduced it down to, oh, he's just a man. No, he's not just a man. He is a man. And look at what the potential of a man could be when he walks in obedience and listens and heeds the words of his Father. But he is a man above men, because he is the anointed man, and he is not just a prophet who speaks the words of God. He is more than that. Okay, go ahead, Ty.
Really? This whole thing about the son, the firstborn son is the Jews. They despise their birthright. They deny the son. They deny their inheritance. They've been led astray. Hebrew roots is full of that. It's leading away from the Messiah. Everyone's despising their birthright as a son. The ones that are born of the Spirit are the ones that are becoming the sons. And they hate us. It's a fight. It's the same old fight all the way back to Cain and Abel, Esau and Jacob. One denying their birthright and trying to do their own thing. So that I just wanted to give that commentary of what it is we're facing with these Yeshua deniers. They're Cain. They've been tricked, and they won't turn back. You have to be a son. That's the age we're in. It's the messianic age. The son is the way, and it's not just a son. It's all these sons. That's why it's more of a generic sons in Hebrew, and then in Hebrews, and then it goes into the son himself, the anointed of David. So it's all very, very clear in all these more simple stories, these simpler narratives in Torah. I mean, it's talking about what we're doing today. And we have to answer for the virgin birth. It's brilliant. The enemy is brilliant. He's like, either he's taking his son and making him an idol and you become an idolater, or you just deny him altogether and think that somehow your Judaism, your flesh, is going to save you. And it's like, it's brilliant. And it's the few of us in the middle holding on to all of it and making it all work. That's the way, we see it through the Spirit. We see the scriptures through the Spirit. We're being begotten of the Spirit. We're having eyes to see the way a Father wants it. We don't have all the answers, but we're on the right path. So we're fighting. We're at the marrow of the fight with this virgin birth stuff and the truth of who the Messiah is. So we have to make sure to cling fast to the Son and believe. And I mean, I think this is the whole point of Hebrews, the book we're studying. So I just want to throw all that out there.
Yeah, very good stuff, Ty. And and to add to that too, at the same time, I remember early on when we first went to the farm, I said that we were talking about who the Messiah was, and I said that he was the one that laid the foundation for. And this is before I ever looked at virgin birth. He laid the foundation for us to show us the way to the Father and how we should all aspire to be, to live, and to act out the commands of the Torah. And then I got comments like, well, we can't do what he did because he was, and all this kind of stuff. And we never talked about it again, but I remember it now because of all the things that I'm learning now. And so the point is, to me, I think now, it's more now than ever in my walk important to understand the way he came to be, who he was. Because it's not so far from us that we can't become the same. Not necessarily that we're going to go die and save everybody and all that stuff. That's not the point. But the point is that we have a responsibility, and we have to be accountable to that. And whenever we remove the humanity from Messiah, then we remove that accountability from us. We're no longer responsible for ourselves, and I think that's what attracts people to that doctrine. Is that, oh, I'm just a sinner and I can't do anything about it, so I'm going to go do this today and I'll go to church tomorrow. Kind of mentality. And the whole thing about our generational culture in the last 2 generations that I've seen is that because I'm talking about people my mother's age and then people, of course, my age and everywhere in between. The common consensus is that if I'm living a life that's not right, that I need to go to church. I need to go to a building where people have a Bible in it. And then if I'm sick and I'm not feeling good, I need to go to the doctor. And if I'm not educated, I need to go to school. So these 3 facets are the most infiltrated areas in our culture. So there are people who used to be wizards and warlocks and all these things, who will openly tell you that the churches are infiltrated. They send agents into the churches to spread false doctrine. We know the medical industry is full of false information, as well as the educational system with the deliberate dumbing down of America and every other nation. It's not just America. And so whenever we lean on those 3 outlets for our source of truth and what we should live by, there's no wonder that people's health is dwindling. The education of children is far worse than it's ever been. Every area of, and then the spiritual responsibility of the church body is just non-existent. When most people will just refer to the pastor. Let me look in my notes what the pastor said, and I'll tell you what that means. And it's just the age where people aren't accountable anymore. And so and I was thinking about today, Carrie, I was reading on your site. I forget what page it was on, but I was reading in the comments down below where a couple of people had responded telling you thank you for posting the information. I think on When the Day Begins, I think it was. There was like 3 different sections of comments, and they were really nice. And I was reading that, and I thought to myself, that's awesome, because there are people who hunger and thirst for the information that they're not getting anywhere else. And it's not about what one person can or can't deliver or what one person does or doesn't know, because it's about more than any of us. It's about how do we handle the information that the Father's revealing to us? Do we use it to edify the body and to help others who really do want it? Or do we hold it for ourselves and hope that everybody else gets it? It's kind of like I liken it to the pray for, you pray for your brother when he needs food and he needs shirt, but you didn't give him anything. So what good's that? So I mean, I'm really thankful for this group, because I know we've grown a lot being able to fellowship and talk about these different crazy ideas. It's helped us heal from a lot of things too, because we had a lot of pain and a lot of hurt over some really bad experiences that pretty much anybody here has heard at least a little bit about, and it's really made Virginia not such a bad word for us. So yeah, I think it's great, and Carrie and Ty, both of you guys have a really unique way of sharing what you've learned without actually stepping on somebody's toes, as long as they're willing to grow. And Ty, and so I really, and I was thinking in my head about forgive me, I had a really good Power Pack juice, so I'm really pumping right now. But Harry, if you do decide to move forward and write a book on any topic, whether it's a virgin birth or When the Day Begins or any of that stuff, I think that I'm confident that it'll bless several. I can't tell you how many people, but a lot of people will be blessed. And because just look even the people on the website that have commented. I know it's few and far between, and I don't know how many comments you have to not approve that don't make it there. But the fact of it is this: whenever that person sees something, there's books that I've read, that I've looked at, that I've shown to other people, even lent out and let them keep it, because it helped me that much. Todd White, the lawyer from New York, he has a series, Walking in the Light, and or Walk in the Light series. It's really, really helpful. Helped me a lot in learning how to discern different religions and what's the Bible really saying, all these kind of things. I've outgrown it now with the things that I've been learning, but it really helped me in my early phases of my belief. And I think that those types of things can be very vital to whether a person decides to follow the belief or not. Because sometimes for somebody to just jump in and start with different scriptures and all this stuff, it can be very difficult. Yeah.
You said Todd White.
I'm sorry, I meant Todd Bennett, not Todd White. Todd D. Bennett. This is one of, I got a lot of his books, and I didn't read a lot of them because I started learning about When the Day Begins, and I actually emailed the guy to show him what I was learning, and of course he responded pretty typically that most people fall into the error of morning day start, blah blah, all that stuff. And I never emailed him again after that. I just don't, whatever. But that's not the point. The point is we all miss something. We're all somewhere. We all need help with something. So if we all have talents. Like Logan's really good at, getting on his bulletproof, gear and cooking in the kitchen. We all have something that we're good at and we can do it. So that's, and I'm going to stop now because I could keep going.
I had a comment unless somebody else wants to go ahead of me. All right. Michael was talking about accountability and all of that, how the grace is a way to cop out. I think the accountability to the sons that we're talking about is to the ultimate shedding of our flesh, which is what the Messiah did. When you talk about a blood sacrifice and all of this stuff that it's hard to answer for, it's like we live this, and it's going to be like Cain and Abel. Cain is going to hate us. Mm-hmm. We got to live it all the way to the point of giving up everything. So I think that's the full circumcision. I think that's the whole burnt offering. I think that was always the intent. I think that as wanting to be the sons, we have to be willing to go that far and not give up. So this fight we're in, to varying degrees, is a real thing. And it's the closer you become to becoming a son, the more the one that's not a son is going to hate you. So it's a kind of a sobering thought, but I wanted to throw that out there. I know it's a little bit of a tangent, but to me, that's how the blood sacrifice, that's more about the idea of what the Messiah did. He obeyed even unto the death.
Mm-hmm.
It's not about human blood atoning for sin. We're reading it the wrong way. And this is going to come up in Hebrews later, is why I wanted to kind of precursor it a little bit. So to be a son, it's going to cost you. It's going to hurt. You're going to have to get circumcised. So how far are you going to go? It's your free will choice.
I will say though, the further along you go, the more resolute. That's how I've been. My journey has been. The further along I go, the more resolute I am in what I'm seeing, and it doesn't hurt me as much because I'm getting a clearer understanding along the way. It doesn't mean I don't ever get hurt, but I can see why the martyrs of the first century church, the apostles and those martyrs, I can see why they continued despite all odds. I mean, despite all physical harm that was coming their way, because it's like you once you get through certain milestones, so to speak, in your understanding, it's like I don't care what you do, you can't take this away from me. I have it. Anyway, I'll stop with that. So I want to encourage everyone to continue to study to show yourself approved. Continue to seek out answers for your own personal questions that you have when you're reading things. If you come across people that are saying, that are denying Yeshua, I'm learning more to pray. I don't assume everybody that denies Yeshua as the Messiah as being truly an anti-Messiah, because I do think there are genuine people out there that just have been exposed to a false image of the Messiah. But don't get me wrong, there are people out there that are anti-Messiah, and you will know them by their fruit. But I don't think we should write anybody off completely, because as long as we draw breath, there is hope, I believe, of people, waking up or seeing the light, so to speak. So I wouldn't necessarily write them off, but I have learned it's time for me to move on. If I start witnessing and seeing fruit of the enemy in their responses to their, I don't believe Yeshua is the Messiah, but then they start being hateful and that kind of, I walk away. I leave them in the Father's hands. I trust that someone, down the road may plant seeds, and the soil will be more fertile at that time to accept the seed. But right now, if that's the kind of reaction I get, I move on, because I know that there's plenty out there that need what I have to offer, and I want to not be distracted and held back by that. But I want to encourage all of you to continue to study for yourselves and have an answer for yourselves. Something I found this week. All right, I'm going to say a couple of things real quick, just kind of touch on some things that came up this week for me. One is there is a natural tendency to want to turn to other men to get answers. There's a natural tendency when I don't understand something, or if you don't understand something, well, let me go Google it, or YouTube video, watch some other teachings, or, go ask somebody I know who reads their Bible and see what they say. And I'm not opposed to getting input from other people. That's why we do that. That's why I'm engaged in the Zoom room like this. But the tendency that I have seen in my experience is people begin to lean on that, and they begin to turn to that first before asking the Father. And they continue to, once they get a good word, they want to go back for more, and they want to go back for more, and they kind of forget to go back to the Father and say, that was a really good word, but was that from you? I mean, does that line up with what you're trying to tell me? And we got to be careful not to do that, and just be vigilant about continually going back to the Father, continually wanting to be taught by Him or taught by Yeshua, however you want to look at it, wherever you're at in your understanding of all that. But continue to go back to the source. That's one thing. Another thing, the serpent seed doctrine came up in my path this week, and it was really kind of shocking to me. I was listening to a woman's YouTube video, couple different episodes that that I had come in. I just recently met and online, and I was wanting to know her position on some things, and I was tracking with her. I'm like, yeah, and then all of a sudden she like jumped a track, and I was like, what? And this idea of the serpent in the garden somehow had interaction with Eve in the same way that the sons of God got with the daughters of men in Genesis 6. That was her thinking. And that Cain was a product of that. And I was like, whoa, where did that come from? And I tried talking to her about it, but it seems, at least in her response, she seems pretty set with that understanding right now. So I'm not going to pursue further dialogue with that, but that's not where I'm at. So we need to be very vigilant, because very careful, and to not be led into following after the teachings of men, because they sound good, but then we need to be discerning when they jump a track. So just want to encourage you all in that. Does anybody have any questions or something that they want to ask me in particular? I'm open. So I was kind of like, I didn't have a set purpose. Oh, hi, Logan.
Hey there. You have my full attention again. I'm kind of done, well, sort of almost done with what I need to do.
Oh, I know what I did want to say about the Messiah. It is important, I think, and I have to be mindful of be careful in doing this. In saying that Yeshua is a man, I don't ever want to demote him from the position of being the anointed man, because kind of like what the author of John was saying in the opening of his book, how John, he wasn't that light. Yeshua was that light. John recognized that Yeshua was greater than he was, even though later Yeshua identifies John as a light. And he even says that John is, he was the greatest up until that point. And then he says, but yet he's the least in the kingdom. I'm excited about that. I think I'm gonna study that a little bit more. Maybe I can talk about that more in the future. But that's hopeful for us, because I think he may be alluding to this transition of being a prophet to being a son. And a prophet is like a messenger. A prophet is, they get a word, they're a spokesman, they speak, and then it's over. A son is
a servant.
Yes, a prophet, it's a servant, yes. But a son has a closer, more intimate bond and is taught by his father on an intimate level, and the son naturally acquires a whole lot more from the father than just, say, a servant or a messenger might. The servant, will get an order to, go do such and such or whatever. But a son has a bond that is so much closer and carries so much more weight. It's a different role. And while we are all, in a sense, we are servants of the Most High, and we are servants of our Master Yeshua, but we are becoming, I believe, we are becoming the sons of God, having a more intimate relationship with our Father as we grow and mature and just align ourselves more with what Yeshua has revealed concerning our Father, who He is, and what His Word says, and just our walking it out and the maturing process and all of that. It's exciting. It's exciting, and there's hope for a wonderful.
Eleazar or Isaac?
Yeah. Okay, so the floor is now open to whatever anyone wants to talk about, or questions or comments or direction that they want to take this next segment into.
If you want to ask some questions on the recording regarding what we just talked about, and after that, we'll just turn it off for fellowship. So is there any questions regarding the past hour or 2 hours? Any comments that you want to go on the record, or any questions that you want answered on the record? Otherwise, we'll turn it off.
In thinking about what you were saying, Carrie, about Yeshua, the spoken word, I can see more why he was able to forgive sin, why he brought salvation, because it was the Father in him that gave him that authority through his spoken word.
Yeah.
As the son, he had a lot of authority given to him. He came on behalf of his father. And as the inheritor of his father's household, he man, if we follow after that, we'll be like him. We'll be doing the things that he said we do it. Why aren't we doing it? It's because these religions are wrong.
Yes, and that's where the enemy has infiltrated and distorted things, and we're seeing the results of that through religion and people falling away and not having any life to what the Father has given the Son to be the first of many more.
Yes, the sons have life. The sons have love. The sons.
Yes.
You can always tell that religious spirit, once you get to recognize it, it'll raise its ugly head, and you say, "Is that you, Cain? Is that you, Cain?" I recognize that.
Yes. Yes.
I think about that whack-a-mole carnival game, the whack-a-mole that raises its head. Anyway, sorry.
Yes, crushing the head. I love it.
Yes, exactly. And I think, like, for us, we had to get to the point where we were so tired of religion and hopping from one place to another. And the last place we were at a Messianic congregation. But when we started seeing what was going on and we left, we kind of were like, okay, what's next? What's now? But we got to crying out and says, we want we don't want the counterfeit anymore. We want the true Word of God. We want the Word of God and not the counterfeit. And that's where these people are going to have to get in their own lives to cry out and say, we don't want religion anymore. We don't want the counterfeit.
Yeah, and I think what's happening in this day and age, it's becoming more and more obvious what the counterfeit. I mean, it's becoming more and more obvious of, okay, you're going to have a choice, and I'm going to make it nice and clear for you, and you choose. So while at times, you know, I know in the past I may have felt like, oh man, I wish it's just getting so dark in these days, and oh, it's just so bad. But yet in a way, I'm kind of like, I think it's almost merciful that our Father is doing this, or allowing this, I should say, because he's giving people a choice. He's making it very clear. It's light and darkness here. Which one are you going to choose? And people can't be like, well, I didn't know. It's like, it's going to be pretty
right. And looking at the word begotten son, the only begotten, we know that Yahweh had more sons, but this son was going to be a unique son, kind of like one of a kind son out of all his sons.
Yeah, and I think he's unique. I think he's unique because he's the anointed one. He's the one that was chosen.
Yes.
But the thing that and I don't want to rehash, but I do want to. He was groomed as a human being. He didn't come out of the womb. You know, this is the Son of God. You know, here is the anointed one. Plop him on the throne. He had to grow up, and he had to mature, and he had to learn.
Yes.
He was groomed before the Father finally, you know, put his stamp on him and say, "This is my son, whom I love."
Yes.
So
hear
we all
him. When he was baptized, he said, "Hear him."
So in this age, we need to follow after the Son to get to the Father. That is the Father's will at this point. This is why it says the only way to the Father is through the Son. It's true for us. It's not true for all times before the Messiah came. I don't go for all that preeminent Messiah stuff. There was other ways to become other harvests. You know, Elijah and Enoch and Noah and who knows who else was a son. But now in this time, this age, we follow after the Son. And if you're denying him, those people are putting their salvation in jeopardy. I'm not saying the Father's mercy is great, but I mean, he's got a plan. We need to stick to the plan. We don't make the Son God. We make the Son the path to God, as he showed us by example. We need to do this. I mean, we're saying the Christian ideas, but it's with a new understanding. The gospel is there is a Son, and he's a guy, and he died for us. He did it the way it's supposed to be done. It's just a whole new...
And brought the truth, fulfilled the truth.
Revealed it. He revealed it. And he didn't just reveal it to his own household. He's revealing it to the nations. He's revealing it.
He said it many times. Verily, I testify to the truth. I am here to tell you the truth. I tell you this. Verily. Over and over and over and over. He told us the truth.
And he spoke in parables for those that had eyes to see. The idea is like taking off these spiritual blinders that have been on, you know, and he's now speaking things that are like, he is revealing truth. And I think a lot of times people don't recognize that the truth that they see now is a result of what the Anointed One did and is doing. So
yes.
Kay, you want to say something? I see it on your face.
Great, calling her out when she's not ready.
Well,
that's Ty.
Oh yes, it is.
No, I was just soaking everything in. You know how Carrie was talking about man wanting to be something else. I mean, it's all around us. I mean, it explains so many things. You know how people nowadays, especially the younger generation, like they look they don't look human anymore, like with the hair, blue, pink, purple, whatever, and then the makeup on, like they look so different. And we've passed by Vancouver downtown one time, and it was the anime festival something, and they just look strange, like out of this world, but for them that is cool. And it's like they don't want to look like themselves anymore. And yes, they look like aliens pretty much. And so, and then tying it with, you know, how Emily was saying earlier about the deception. And then, so because Satan has been telling us that, oh, you're just a man, you're weak, you're prone to sin, you're, you know, that's why you need Jesus. I mean, it's a deception. You need Jesus because, you know, you're always in sin. You can never get out of sin.
Is it?
And so all of these things, the deception, it's growing. We've been soaking it in it, like simmering in it for years. And it's really good to be able to see all that now. That's why, like when we were talking about last week, something about the, like, is the rain here and now? Is it happening? The outpouring of the Spirit, it's the only explanation I can think of that we are seeing and hearing these things. I mean, without the Ruach, I don't think this is even possible. I mean, no matter how many times we read our Bibles, we will never see it without the Ruach being upon us. So it's the only way that, you know, we are seeing these things. And I am very thankful to the Father that has not only called us, but He has chosen us. Right? Like I'm understanding it. The verse where it says, many are called, but few are chosen. So there is a filtering happening. And thank you, Abba. Thank you for all the revelation and the obedient heart that He has given us, and for this fellowship.
You know, something that's amazing for me is that even those who may not even have the Bible, the scriptures to read, it's like the manifestation, like you're saying, the outpouring of the Ruach now, it's like you have people who are coming into knowing the Father and to knowing Him this way and keeping His commands and keeping His will just through the Ruach without having any scripture, without having any Bible. And for myself, I know, I know other people have had this experience where it's like when we are praying and we're praying to the Father for answers and He's giving us answers, and then later on we find that it's actually something that's written in the scriptures, and we didn't, and I know for myself, I'm like, okay, I didn't really know about this particular passage, and then when it's brought to the forefront of my mind, my attention, it's like, and then I come across in scripture, I'm like, oh my goodness. And so yeah, I just wanted to say it's you know, it's amazing.
Okay, I think we can probably finish the recording if it hasn't been finished.